The word iota has two distinct meanings. As a noun, 1. A tiny or scarcely detectable amount. 2. The ninth letter of the Greek alphabet.
Good morning. Welcome to Iota for Monday, August 1st, 2016. I am Tony Lynn. Iota is a daily podcast about all things IoT related. All right. We're running a little bit crazy this morning. Let me see if I can't find my screen. There we go. Now we're looking good. All right. Sorry about that, everyone. Been a rough weekend. So welcome to August 1st. Today is the first day of school. And so everyone's a little frazzled this morning. And fortunately, the kids are off to school now and I can focus on this. So I apologize for the slowness on the startup. As I said, IoT is focused on all things internet, IoT related, Internet of Things, with a little bit of focus on Atlanta, just because I live in Atlanta. It makes it a little bit easier for me to do. But without further ado, let's get to the stories of the day. Silicon Labs has released its new Thunderboard React developer kit that features a battery-powered and powerful ARM Cortex-M4 processor. All hardware schematics, firmware, mobile apps, and cloud software are available at no charge to developers. The React simplifies IoT design by providing sensing, processing, and wireless components needed to connect to a battery-powered sensor. All this to a cloud database. The onboard sensors can measure motion, light, and environmental conditions. Now, although you have access to all the schematics and everything for free, if you actually want one of the boards start at $29. That's actually a really, really good price for an IoT developer kit. So it's certainly a lot cheaper than the AT&T one we reviewed last week. They do have an additional one at $59. So if you want to get started, that's a good way to do it. Can IoT help with the Zika virus? Well, IBM seems to think so. Mark Skilton at the Huffington Post reports that on efforts that IBM is going through to help monitor the growing Zika concern. IBM has created a vast virtual model that helps analyze weather patterns, the human travel movement, and social media comments to determine how the virus spreads. Now, this is not exactly IoT, although they're using the fact that it is mobile to kind of pigeonhole it into our industry. That in big data, I don't really know that it actually fits completely. However, IBM wants to use this as a way to further discuss IoT, so good on them, I guess. Loria Alcala of CMS Wire discusses the hype machine behind IoT. So she offers up some skepticism about all the reports, many that we've already reported on, because Ona stated that if the hype is even remotely true, then we'll soon be dealing with more data than we can possibly process, and the deluge will make big data look like it's big data on steroids. The amount of data that makes it increasingly harder to analyze that data in real time. She's actually, even though the hype machine is, we've been reporting on it, seems to be well well out of control at this point. What she's actually referring to is that if it is not out of control, then we're going to have a hard time keeping up. And she may be correct, specifically around the fact that it's not only that we can capture the data, because I think we can capture data like crazy. I think it's really what do we do with it afterwards. And there's actually a story further in the lineup that we'll talk about. It actually kind of hinges on this as well. One of the biggest problems in IoT is the fact that it's hard to create embedded code in parallel to the new hardware. Tom Lombardo of Engineering.com reports on SIBO, which recently released its IoT Creator that allows engineers the ability to create a virtual version of the product that can test embedded code. And it also helps keep track of potential hardware costs. Now, let me just give everyone a real good understanding of this, is that one of the hardest things to do when you're trying to come up with a new hardware design is the fact that once you have a prototype, then a prototype gets shipped off to the developer embeds some code, they test it, and they go, oh, yeah, that doesn't work. And, we need this hardware to do something else instead, or we need to form factor smaller, or whatever the case is. And there's a lot of back and forth. I've an example I can't talk about, but I do know of someone who recently tried this, and even though they had really quality personnel on both sides of the house, is that the back and forth literally added months and months and months to the project. It's not really something that you want to do. And it's one of those things that might derail some IoT deployments. So I'm happy to see that someone's trying to address this. I'm curious to actually try it out myself and see. The thing that intrigues me is the actual hardware cost, that it supposedly will build a version of it in virtual, and then we'll tell you how much it will cost to get it manufactured. Now, we reported on the twins from last week, where you need to have a virtual twin of the hardware, and this actually kind of starts with that instead of ends with that, which I think is an interesting thing. So the Economic Times reports that it will take a century to roll out IoT completely. Kevin Ashton believes that while the amount of data that we collect will ramp quickly, our ability to make use of it will not, since ultimately we require humans to make sense of the data. In other words, humans can't scale as well or efficiently as computers, and the time it takes to get enough educated humans in the system is still decades away. So this is the one that I was mentioning that dovetailed into the other one. Maybe I should have put the two of them together, but when you're doing a lineup, it doesn't always work out that way. This is an intriguing idea, is that even though right now we can flood the world with sensors and collect lots of data, that the amount of data that we get is just going to be useless to us for a limited time period until we get enough kids, adults, doesn't matter for kids, coming out of school with data science degrees or computer science degrees that can actually start to make use of what this data actually means. I'm happy to see this, because it does mean that like I said, there's plenty of jobs, plenty of work in this field going forward. And I do know that when it comes time to building anything efficiently, the humans are always the limiting factor. I think some cognitive science, the whole machine learning that exists these days might question that. Although I was recently challenged with machine learning, is that machine learning is more of a social learning than it is really a machine, and that particularly in hardware manufacturing, it's very hard to even be 1% wrong. You need to be almost 100% all the time. So I do think that all these things can come together, and whatever we can do, either we're going to make Skynet and we're all going to be in trouble, or we're going to struggle at getting there. But I think only time will tell. As always, whatever your thoughts on this story may be, please just drop me a line. So here's a very interesting one, and I think I understand why it's a story, but let's discuss it anyway. Samsung and Nestle band together to create health-focused IoT devices. They intend to create a connected health and lifestyle platform that will interact with everything from smart TVs to wearables. Okay, so first thought that comes to mind is that, of course, Samsung would do this, because Apple already has their health kit and a way to actually start making you healthier through all of the Apple ecosystem. So why would Samsung not do it? And why not find a partner that can actually help with this? Now, I'm intrigued that Nestle, who in my mind, at least when I think of Nestle, I think of chocolate, and which seems to not be very healthy at all, that they're trying to do this. Now, I don't know if this is just a PR focus on Nestle's part, or if they truly got an endeavor to try to make health better for their consumers. Time will tell. I do think this is an also ran, just from the standpoint of Samsung has to have something like this, and does it really matter who their partner is? I don't know, but anyway, this is an interesting story. And finally, our last story of the day is David Curry of Read Write reports that 2 IoT alliances are joining forces to help make IoT development more seamless. The Thread Group, which basically stemmed from Alphabet's Nest, and the Open Connectivity Foundation are working together to ensure cross-platform interoperability. Now, neither one of these actually work in the same space, and what they really are talking about is that if one is in a device and the device crosses over into the other space, that they have the ability to talk to each other without too much trouble. Now, this is a great idea. The fact that right now we kind of live in a wild, wild west, where every large manufacturer that comes out with a device has its own platform and its own ecosystem, and neither the twain shall meet. This actually is the first real discussion of coming into a place where, yes, you can still have your own, your own world to live in, but now we have the ability to talk among those worlds, to actually start a real conversation and communication back and forth. This is going to have to happen. In any technology boom like we're seeing now, there's a lot of spread out parts, and eventually they'll start to coalesce, and they'll start to condense into smaller and smaller players. And while that may be fine for platforms and connectivity, I'm not really sure that's what we need for the actual devices themselves and for the innovation that's going to come along. But having the ability for these platforms to interact, I think, is crucial. So well, that's it for today. That was actually a fairly long show, considering we had a lot of news over the weekend. As always, please send me whatever feedback that you may have. Any thoughts, questions, complaints, send them to tonamuck@gmail.com. If you're interested in possibly being on the show or providing stories that we can report on, please do so. Particularly if you're in the Atlanta area, I would love to report on what you might be doing. And you'll start to see me around at most of the meetups over the next several months. If you're enjoying what you're doing and you want to maybe push me to be better, maybe have better graphics, maybe better sound, then feel free to support me at patreon.com/tonamuck. As always, my email address is tonamuck@gmail.com. You can find me at tonamuck on Twitter, or you can find any of my projects at www.tonamuck.com. Until tomorrow, have a great day.